Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be drawing the story The Open Window by Saki. My aunt will be down in a few minutes, Mr. Nuttall, said a very confident young lady of 15. In the meantime, you must try and put up with me. Do you know many of the people round here? Asked the niece when she judged that they had sufficient silent communication. Hardly a soul, said Frampton Nuttall. My sister was staying here 4 years ago and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people here. Then you know practically nothing about my aunt? Continued the confident young lady. Only her name and address, admitted the caller. Her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago. That would be since your sister's time. Her tragedy? Asked Frampton. Somehow, in this restful country spot, tragedies seem out of place. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon, said the niece, indicating a large French window that opened onto a lawn. It is quite warm for the time of the year, said Frampton. But has that window got anything to do with the tragedy? Out through that window 3 years ago, her husband and her two young brothers went off for their day's shooting. They never came back. In crossing the moor to their favorite snipe shooting ground, all three drowned in a dangerous piece of bog. It had been that dreadful wet summer, and places that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. Poor aunt always thinks that they will come back someday. They and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them and walk in at that window just as they used to do. That is why the window is open every evening till it is quite dusk. And Ronnie, her youngest brother, singing Bertie, why do you bound? As he always did to tease her, because she said it got on her nerves. She broke off with a little shudder. It was a relief to Frampton that when the aunt entered into the room with a series of apologies for being late in making her appearance. I hope Vera has been amusing you, she said. She has been very interesting, said Frampton. I hope you don't mind the open window, said Mrs. Sappleton. My husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting, and they always come this way. They have been out for snipe in the marshes today, so they'll make a fine mess over my poor carpets. So like you menfolk, isn't it? She rattled on cheerfully about the shooting and scarcity of birds. To Frampton, it was all purely horrible. Then she suddenly brightened into alert attention. Here they are at last, just in time for tea, and don't they look as if they were muddy up to the eyes? In chill shock of nameless fear, Frampton swung round in his seat and looked up at the same direction. In the deepening twilight, three figures were walking across the lawn towards the window. They all carried guns under their arms. A tired brown spaniel kept close at their heels, noiselessly as they neared the house. Then a hoarse young voice chanted out at dusk, "I said, Bertie, why do you bound?" Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat. The hall door, the gravel drive, and the front gate were dimly noted stages in his headlong retreat. A cyclist coming along the road had to run into the hedge to avoid imminent collision. "Who is that who bolted as we came up?" "Mr. Nuttall." "A most extraordinary man." "I expect it was a spaniel. He told me he had a horror of dogs. He was once hunted into a cemetery somewhere on the banks of the Ganges by a pack of stray dogs, and he had spent the night in his newly dug grave with the creatures snarling and grinning and foaming just above him, enough to make anyone lose their nerve. Making up interesting life stories for other people at short notice was her specialty." The end.